The silence in this house is sometimes unbearable. I have to turn on the radio, even though I don't really listen to what's being said, just to hear human voices. It's been 4 years since Eustace died, and I still turn around when I hear the floorboards creak, as if they were his footsteps. 67 years old, and I still act like a girl in love with a lover around every corner. Our house in Marysville seems too big now. 3 bedrooms, a living room, a kitchen with a dining area. We bought it when the boys were little, and we needed the space. Now, however, every room is a reminder of what is no longer there. In Preston's bedroom, I've set up a sewing room of sorts, though I sew less and less often. Avery's room has become a warehouse of things I can't get my hands on. There's no one to throw it away, no one to use it. Preston, my oldest, hasn't been here in over a year. He drives trucks across the country, and his routes rarely go through Marysville. At least that's what he says. I know it's not just work. There's always been some reticence between us, especially after he decided to drop out of college and go to work. Eustace never hid his disappointment. He said at the time, "It doesn't take much to turn the wheel." Preston never forgot that. Probably hasn't forgiven me for not taking his side. I take the envelope with the next heating bill out of the mailbox and sigh. Prices are going up, but the pension remains the same. After 30 years as a school secretary, I get enough to keep me from starving, but not nearly as much as I'd like. Eustace left a small insurance policy, and this house is our greatest asset. A house we've been paying off for almost 20 years, saving for everything. The front door creaks as I step inside. I should oil the hinges, but I can't get around to it. Eustace used to do that sort of thing. Now I'm learning to do it myself, but it doesn't always work. There's a morning cup of tea on the kitchen table. I put it in the sink and look out the window at the neighbor's yard where the kids are playing. My boys used to run around the lawn the same way. The phone rings, interrupting my musings. Avery's name pops up on the screen. Unlike Preston, my youngest son calls regularly. Sometimes I think a little too regularly. "Mom, how are you today?" His voice sounds cheerful, even fake. "I'm fine, Avery. I just got back from the store." "Did you go grocery shopping alone again? I thought we said we could bring everything we needed." "I like getting out of the house," I said. "As long as my legs can walk, I'll use it." "Mom," he said, a note of irritation in his voice that he tried to hide. "You have to take care of yourself, at your age." "At my age, people can still walk to the store around the corner." I interrupt. "Is something wrong?" "It's nothing. Odette and I thought we'd stop by your place tonight. We'll make dinner, sit together. Avery works at the insurance company, writing policies. Odette's a florist at a store on Main Street. Seems like an ordinary working couple, but there's something about their visits that always makes me tense. Maybe it's the way Odette stares too intently as she looks around the rooms, or the way Avery keeps asking about my accounts and savings. "Okay, I'll be waiting," I reply. "What time should I expect you?" Around 6, I think. Odette's working late tonight." After the conversation, I start cleaning the house, though it's not a mess. I just don't want Odette to make another remark about the dust on the bookshelves or the old-fashioned curtains that are long overdue for replacement. The last time she even offered to help me unpack and throw out all this junk. By junk, she meant the photographs that Eustace and I had collected over the years, his collection of old records, and my needlework. I pull the photo album out of the closet and sit down in the chair by the window. Here's Preston, serious even as a child, holding his first fish he caught. And here's Avery at his high school graduation, smiling so wide you can see all his teeth. Back then, Eustace and I were proud of both of them. When did things change? Preston's always been independent. After high school, he went to college to study engineering, but only lasted a year and a half. One night, he simply said he was dropping out and going to work with his father's friend, a truck driver. Eustace was furious. They were yelling at each other so loudly that the neighbors must have heard everything. "You're throwing your life away," shouted Eustace. "And you never asked what I wanted," Dash replied Preston. He left the next day, called rarely, came even less often. Over time, the relationship seemed to improve, but something snapped permanently. After Eustace's funeral, Preston stayed only 2 days. He said he had a flight, but I could tell he was just having a hard time being in that house. Avery was different, more open, more dependent. His grades were average, but his charm always got him along with his teachers. After high school, he went to community college, got some kind of business degree. Eustace was pleased, though he kept saying that Avery was unlikely to make any real money. Perhaps he was right. When Avery had brought Odette to meet us, she had immediately made an impression of a girl with ambition. "We have big plans," she said, stroking my son's hand. "A house of our own, a business of our own." 4 years later, they're still renting an apartment, and their own business is still a dream. The doorbell rings at 6 o'clock sharp. Avery and Odette are standing on the doorstep with bags from the grocery store. Odette is as flawless as ever perfect hair, neat makeup, a fancy dress that must cost more than she makes in a week. "Mom!" Avery hugs me, smelling of expensive cologne. "You look great." "Imogene." Odette kisses the air near my cheek. "We brought groceries for dinner. I thought I'd cook something special." They walk into the kitchen, and Odette immediately starts bossing around like it's her house. Avery pulls out a bottle of wine, which I don't drink anyway because of the meds. "How's your blood pressure, Mom?" he asks, pouring wine for himself and his wife. "It's fine," I say. Dr. Burke says it's fine for my age." "That's good." Odette nods, chopping vegetables. "But you need to get more rest. This house is so big for one person. There's so much work to clean, the garden." "I can manage," I say, though I know where she's going with this. "Of course you are." Avery smiles. "But you're not getting any younger, Mom. Odette and I often talk about how you'd be better off in some cozy retirement home. There's medical care and socialization with your peers." I look at them and realize this is a conversation they've rehearsed. Avery speaks softly, sympathetically, and Odette nods occasionally, confirming his words. "I'm not going to a nursing home," I say firmly. "This is my home, and this is where I'm staying." "Mom, no one is talking about a nursing home." Avery corrects quickly. "There are beautiful complexes for active retirees. A little apartment, no worries." "What's going to happen to this house?" I ask bluntly. They exchange quick glances. Odette is the first to answer. "You could rent it out or sell it. The money would go to pay for your new apartment and your needs. Or we could move in here," Avery adds. "Look after the house, keep it in good condition. It's a family heirloom." So that's what this is about. They want my house. The house that Eustace and I bought, saving every penny we could. The house where our children grew up. A house full of memories that mean nothing to them. "I'm not moving," I say, and my hand involuntarily clenches into a fist. "And I'm not selling the house." "But Mom," Avery starts, "let's just have dinner." Odette cuts him off with a strained smile. "Imogene, it's not like we're insisting. We're just looking out for you." The dinner is tense. Odette talks about her job, about difficult clients who can't decide between roses and lilies for their wedding bouquets. Avery complains about a boss who doesn't appreciate his contribution to the company. I nod and pretend I'm interested in all of this. After dinner, Odette starts doing the dishes, and Avery takes me aside. "Mom, I wanted to talk to you about finances," he says quietly. "How are you doing with your expenses?" "Fine," I answer. "The pension's enough. And Dad's insurance? Are you still getting paid?" "Avery, that's none of your business." I could feel the irritation building. I'm handling my finances on my own. Mom, I just want to help. He feigns offense. Maybe you could show me your accounts. I work in finance. I can give advice. Insurance company, I correct him. You write auto insurance, not manage investments. His face contorts for a moment, and I see something unfamiliar, cold in it, but he quickly pulls himself together. Okay, whatever you say, he shrugs. Just keep in mind that Odette and I are always willing to help. After they leave, I sit in silence for a long time. There's something about their behavior that's bugging me. As Odette hugged me goodbye, she whispered, "Think about our offer, Imogene. You're not getting any younger." I walk over to the phone and look at Preston's number. We haven't spoken in months. The last time he called was on Christmas Day, a brief formal conversation. "How are you doing, Mom?" "Good, son. How are you?" "Fine, lots of work." A couple minutes of nothing, and we were both relieved to say goodbye. My finger hovers over the call button, but I still don't press it. What am I going to tell him? That his brother and sister-in-law are after my house? That I'm scared and alone? No, I can't do that. Preston will think I'm out of my mind. Or worse, he'll think I'm trying to drag him into the family drama he's been so careful to stay out of. I return to the window seat and stare out at the darkening street. The lights are on in the neighboring houses. People are coming home from work. Families are gathering for dinner. Ordinary life that seems more and more distant to me. My gaze falls on Eustace's picture on the mantelpiece. "What would you do if you were me?" I ask silently. He always knew how to put the boys in their place when they overstepped their bounds. But now he's gone, and I'll have to handle it myself. I'm not giving them the house. That's the only thing I know for sure. Let them make other plans for their big future. This house is all I have left, and I will protect it at all costs. After Avery and Odette's visit, I started to notice them showing up more and more often, usually unannounced, with another excuse. Odette would bring a bunch of written-off flowers from the store, or Avery would stop by on his way home from work to see if everything was okay. And each time they leave with questions about my health, bills, or the house. On Wednesday, when I returned from the drugstore, Odette was already waiting for me on the porch with a bag of groceries. "Imogene," she exclaimed with that luscious smile of hers. "I called, but you didn't answer. Thought I'd drop off some fresh bread for you from that bakery you love." I never told her about her favorite bakery. Avery may have mentioned it, but I doubt it. My youngest son has always been focused solely on his own needs. "That's very nice of you," I said, opening the door. "But I shouldn't have worried. It's no bother." Odette slipped into the house, her heels clacking on the wooden floor. "We're family." The word family didn't sound sincere when she said it. We went into the kitchen, and she immediately began to sort through the bag, organizing the groceries on the shelves as if she had a right to do so. "I noticed you were running low on detergent," she said, pulling out a box. "So I bought new." "How did you know about the detergent?" I asked. "Did you go into the basement?" Odette froze for a moment, but she found it quickly. "Avery mentioned it last time. He was helping you with the heavy stuff?" Avery hadn't been down to the basement in months. I distinctly remembered washing the curtains myself last week. "Thank you," I said, deciding to let it go for now. "But next time, please call before you come over. I might have plans." "Of course, Imogene," she smiled, but I could see she was hurt by my words. "I just wanted to do something nice." We were sitting at the kitchen table when she asked casually, "By the way, have you thought about our proposal yet? About moving to a nicer place?" "I'm not moving, Odette," I said firmly. "This house is my home. I've paid the mortgage on it for 30 years. This is where I'm staying." Her eyes narrowed, though her smile didn't waver. "But, Imogene, it's hard for you here alone. So many rooms you don't use. There's a big garden. Avery and I could—" We've been over this, I interrupted. The subject was closed. Then she changed tactics. Avery is so worried about you. You know how much he loves you. He was up half the night last night thinking about how he could help you. I'm fine, I said, and I don't need any help. But what if something happened to you? She wouldn't stop. What if you fall and you can't call for help? Avery wouldn't forgive himself if something happened to his mom and he wasn't there. Was there a threat in her words, or was it just me? I looked at her flawless manicure, at the fancy bracelets that jingled with every movement. Did Avery know how much his wife spent on those trinkets? I have a cell phone with an emergency button, I answered, and neighbors who worry about me. After she left, I walked through the house, checking to see if anything was missing. Everything was in place, but something seemed off. In Avery's bedroom, which now served as a closet, the dresser drawers weren't pulled out the way I'd left them. In the closet, the boxes were in a different order. I called Avery. Did you or Odette go into your old room? I asked her directly. What? No, Mom. Why would you say that? There was surprise in his voice, but it was fake. Someone was going through things in there. Maybe you'd forgotten how you'd arranged them yourself, he suggested softly. You've been a little absent-minded lately. I'm not absent-minded, Avery, I said indignantly, and I remember exactly how I put those boxes away. Okay, he said, conciliatory. Maybe Odette went in there when she was helping you clean up. I'll ask her. But I knew Odette had never helped me clean. She'd wash a couple plates after dinner, that's all. A couple days later, Avery showed up alone, without his wife. This was unusual. They usually showed up together, like a support group for each other. Mom, I wanted to talk to you about something important, he began, rubbing his hands together nervously. We were sitting in the living room. He chose a seat on the couch across from me, as if he were at a job interview. I'm listening, I said, already anticipating an unpleasant conversation. Do you remember Ted Booker, my friend from college? I nodded. Ted had been a nice guy, as far back as I could remember. Came over a few times when the boys were still in school. He works in real estate now, Avery continued. He specializes in houses in the area. So? I asked, even though I knew what he was getting at. He says that real estate prices here have gone up a lot in recent years. Your house is worth about 3 times what you and Dad paid for it. I'm not selling the house, Avery, I said firmly. Don't even start. Mom, I'm not talking about selling. He held up his hands protectively. I'm just thinking about your future. You have a huge asset that doesn't work for you. You could sell it, buy something smaller, and still have a decent amount left over. For what? I asked you straight out. To help you and Odette? Your big business plan? His face reddened slightly. What does this have to do with us? I'm talking about you, about your comfort. Avery, I interrupted. I'm not stupid or blind. You and Odette are in debt up to your eyeballs, aren't you? He looked away, and I realized I'd hit the mark. We're just going through some temporary difficulties, he murmured. Nothing serious. How serious? I insisted. We took out a loan to open a flower store for Odette, but the costs are more than we planned, and the interest is high. Plus the car loan. So you thought my house was your salvation? I could feel the anger building up inside of me. No. I mean, it's not exactly like that. We're really worried about you, Mom. This house is too big for one person. I just thought it would be a win-win for everyone. You'd get the money, buy something smaller, and we could do a little better. What about Preston? I asked. Had you discussed your plans for my house with him? Avery snorted. Preston was never interested in family. When was the last time he'd called you? Come to visit? He's busy with his trucks and his roads. He doesn't care. There was some truth to what he said, and it hurt. Preston really was distant, but I wasn't sure he didn't care. Still, it's his inheritance too, I pointed out. Inheritance? Avery straightened up. Did you make a will? Did you think I wouldn't take care of it? I asked with a slight chuckle. After my father died, I made the arrangements. The house is divided equally between you and Preston. That was a lie. I hadn't made a will yet. I'd been putting it off. But I wanted to see his reaction. Uh, I see. He relaxed a little. But Preston's not coming back to Marysville anyway. He'd probably sell his share. Maybe, I agreed. But it would be his decision, not yours and not mine. Avery left in a bad mood. I saw him talking on the phone in the car before he left, probably to Odette, and from the way he was gesturing, it sounded tense. The next day, I called Ruth Simmons, an old friend of mine who had worked at the bank before retiring. Ruth, I need your help, I said as we met at a cafe near my home. What's wrong, Imogene? She asked, looking at me carefully. You look worried. I told her about Avery and Odette's behavior, their insistence on selling the house. You need to make a will, Ruth said firmly. And you'd better get a good lawyer. I can recommend Helen Bradley. She specializes in this sort of thing. Do you think it's that serious? I asked. I don't know, Ruth shrugged. But it's better to be on the safe side. If they're really in a financial hole, they might get persistent. I took her advice and made an appointment with Helen Bradley. The lawyer turned out to be a woman about my age, with a discerning eye and a direct manner. Dash Mrs. Bonner, she said after hearing my story. Unfortunately, cases of financial pressure on elderly relatives are not uncommon. It's good that you reached out for help. She helped me draw up a will that did indeed divide the house equally between the sons, but with one condition: it couldn't be sold for 5 years after my death. That was to prevent a hasty sale if something happened to me. What about a power of attorney in case of incapacity? Helen asked. Who do you trust to make decisions if you are unable to? I wondered. Avery was the obvious choice. He lived closer, visited me regularly. But right now, I wasn't sure I could trust him. Preston. He was far away, and we hadn't been that close in years. But somehow, I believed he would do the right thing. To my oldest son, Preston, I decided. When I got home, Avery's car was parked on the porch. He and Odette were waiting for me in the living room, obviously using the spare key I'd given them for emergencies. Where have you been? Avery asked with a concern that seemed fake to me. We called, but you didn't answer. I had things to do, I answered dryly, and I don't have to report back. We were just worried, Odette interjected. You never turn your phone off. I didn't turn my phone off. I just left it in my purse on silent. What are you doing here? I asked you straight up. And why did you come in without permission? We have a key. Avery shrugged. You gave it to me. For emergencies, I reminded him. Not for you to come in whenever you want. You're getting suspicious, Imogene. That's not a good sign at your age. My age has nothing to do with it, I said. I just value my privacy. Mom, Avery stepped closer and put his hand on my shoulder. Odette and I have been thinking, and we've decided to propose. We can move in with you. We'll help with the house, the cooking. You wouldn't have to worry about anything. And you won't have to pay rent, I pointed out. Well, that too, he admitted. But we're thinking about you first. And what happens to the house afterward? I added. Mom, Avery acted shocked. How can you think that? Because I wasn't born yesterday, I replied. And the answer is no. I don't want you to move here. They looked at each other. Odette said something silently to Avery, and he nodded. Okay, we understand, he said, but promise to think about it. It could really solve a lot of problems. After they left, I checked the house again. In Eustace's office, the desk drawers were slightly open. Folders of papers, not in the order I'd left them. They were looking for something, maybe a will or financial documents. I opened the top drawer and pulled out a folder of bank statements. Everything was in place, but I noticed that some of the pages were bent, like someone had been looking through them. In the corner of one of the statements was a barely visible fingerprint with nail polish on it. Odette, I decided to call Preston. Even if he's distant, he should know what's going on. But when I dialed the number, I got to voicemail. Leave a message after the beep. Preston, it's Mom, I said after the beep. Please call me when you can. It's important. 2 days later, Avery showed up again, this time with some man in a navy suit. Mom, this is Mr. Parker, he introduced him. He's a real estate consultant. I thought it might be helpful for you to know how much your house is worth now. I didn't invite any consultants, I said indignantly. And I'm not going to sell the house. Dash Mrs. Bonner, Mr. Parker interjected. I'd just like to take a look at the property and give you a preliminary appraisal. It's free of charge. Go away. I pointed to the door. Both of you. Mom, you're being unreasonable. Avery lowered his voice. Dash Mr. Parker is a professional. He'll just give us the information. I don't want that information. I was adamant. And I'm asking you to leave my house. Mr. Parker shifted uncomfortably from foot to foot. I think I'll wait in the car, he said, and quickly retreated. When we were alone, Avery stopped pretending. What's going on with you? Are you getting paranoid? We're trying to help, and you're acting like we're criminals. I found evidence of you and Odette going through my files, I said. You've been entering the house without asking, bringing strangers in. What am I supposed to think? He turned pale, but quickly pulled himself together. You're confused, Mom. No one's been going through your papers. Don't lie to me, Avery. I felt my anger boiling inside me. I'm not crazy or out of my mind. I can see exactly what's going on. What do you think is going on? He crossed his arms over his chest. You and Odette want my house. You're in debt, and you need money. You think if I move or sell the house, you can solve your problems. That's not true, he exclaimed, but his eyes said otherwise. Avery, I sighed. I love you. You're my son. But I will not allow myself to be manipulated. If you need financial help, say so. But the house isn't for sale. We don't need help. He headed for the door. But your behavior worries me, Mother. Perhaps you should consult a doctor. After he left, I called a locksmith and changed the locks. Then I tried Preston again, but it went straight to voicemail. In the evening, I heard a noise at the back door. Looking out the window, I saw Odette trying to open the door with her key. When she failed, she pulled out her cell phone and called someone. A few minutes later, Avery's car pulled up. They talked about something, looking at the house, and then drove off. I didn't sleep well that night. I was haunted by the feeling that it was just beginning, and they weren't going to back down that easily. What will they do next? And how far are they willing to go to get what they want? For almost 2 weeks after the lock incident, there were no calls or visits from Avery. At first, it had been a relief, no pressure, no awkward conversations. But gradually, the silence began to bother me. Not that I missed their visits, but the sudden disappearance seemed suspicious. Avery never knew how to lose with dignity. If he backed off, he must have come up with a new plan. I called Ruth to share my concerns. They're up to something, I said. I can feel it. Maybe they're just offended, she suggested. You changed the locks after all. Avery's not the kind of guy who just takes offense and backs down. I shook my head, though Ruth couldn't see it through the phone. He's stubborn, always has been. Well, keep your eyes open, Ruth advised, and keep me informed. That same evening, as if to confirm my fears, I got a call from Avery. Dash, dash, Mom. His voice sounded unusually soft. I wanted to apologize for our last, misunderstanding. Misunderstanding? I interjected. You brought a stranger into my house without my consent, and then you insinuated that I was losing my mind. I was upset, he sighed. And I said some things I shouldn't have said. I'm so sorry. It was so unlike Avery. In my entire adult life, I couldn't remember him ever sincerely apologizing for anything. Odette and I would like to make it up to you, he continued. Why don't we come over for dinner this Friday night? Odette will make your favorite chicken pot pie. I hesitated. On the one hand, I didn't trust this sudden change. On the other hand, they are my family. And if there was a chance to make things work without the constant pressure of the house, maybe it was worth a try. Okay, I finally agreed. Come by at 6. Great. I could hear the relief in his voice. And, Mom, I have a surprise for you. Something that will make you happy. After the conversation, I sat looking at Eustace's picture for a long time. What would you do? I asked silently again. He had always been a better judge of people than I was. Saw through fake smiles and insincere compliments. Friday, I woke up with a feeling of unease that stayed with me all day. I even called Ruth to tell her about the upcoming dinner. Would you like me to come? She suggested it. I could keep you company. No, I can handle it, I said, though the idea seemed tempting. We'll see what they're up to. By 6 o'clock, I had set the table in the dining room, a room we hadn't used much since the boys were grown. Usually I ate in the kitchen or in the living room in front of the TV. But today I decided to create a more formal setting, getting out the nice china Eustace and I had gotten for our wedding, silverware, crystal glasses. They were 15 minutes late. I heard a car pull up, then voices at the front door. Odette was laughing at something Avery had said. When I opened the door, they were standing on the doorstep with strained smiles. Odette was holding a dish covered with a towel, the aroma of chicken pot pie wafting from it. Avery was clutching a bottle of expensive wine, judging by the label. Mom! He stepped forward and hugged me with exaggerated warmth. You look beautiful. Imogene, Odette nuzzled the air near my cheek. That color really suits you. I was wearing a simple blue blouse I'd worn for years. It was nothing special. Come in, I said. The table was set in the dining room. Oh, how formal, Odette said as she came inside. Special occasion? I just thought it would be nice to use the good dishes, I replied. It's been gathering dust in the closet for too long. We walked into the dining room. Avery whistled when he saw the place setting. Wow, Mom, you did a great job. He pulled out a chair for Odette. Just like the old days when you used to have Sunday dinners. I smiled, remembering those days. Every Sunday, the whole family gathered around this table. Eustace would cut the roast. The boys would talk about school. I would serve the vegetables and make sure all the plates were full. It was a happy time. Odette set the pie on the table and removed the towel. It looked great. Golden crust, neat patterns of dough on top. I hope you like it, she said. I used my grandmother's recipe. Avery uncorked the wine and poured it into glasses. He poured only a little for me, mindful of my medication. To reconciliation, he proclaimed, raising his glass. And to family. We clinked glasses. I took a small sip, watching them over the rim of the glass. They seemed relaxed, even happy. Avery joked. Odette laughed at his jokes. No hints of home or moving in. No pressure. If I didn't know them better, I might have believed it was just a nice family dinner. So, what was the surprise you promised? I asked as we started on the pie. Avery and Odette exchanged glances. We were going to wait for dessert, he said. But since you asked, he pulled an envelope from his inside jacket pocket and placed it on the table. What's this? I hesitated to take it. Open it, Odette smiled. You'll like it. I carefully took the envelope and opened it. Inside was a glossy brochure for the Golden Years Senior Center and a handwritten note, pre-approved for Imogene Bonner. We made the down payment, Avery explained proudly. Booked you a one-bedroom apartment with a view of the park and a small terrace for your flowers. It's got a pool, gym, library. I stared at the brochure in silence. On the cover, happy gray-haired people were playing golf and sitting in the cafe. It's not a surprise, I said at last. It's the same thing you suggested before. No, Mom, Avery objected. Last time it was just an idea. Now we've got it all organized. You don't have to worry about anything. And how do you envision it? I asked, trying to stay calm. I sell the house, move there, and you. We'll take care of all the selling, Odette interjected. We have a great realtor. He's already appraised the house and says he can sell it quickly and for a good price. You appraised my house without my knowledge? I felt the blood rush to my face. We wanted to make sure it was real before we offered it to you, Avery explained. We didn't want to make any empty promises. I'm not selling the house, I said firmly, returning the brochure to the envelope. We'd already discussed this, but Mom, Avery stepped forward. You haven't even considered the offer. It's a beautiful place. There's a medical staff there to keep you healthy. You'll make new friends your own age. And all this I'm supposed to get in exchange for my house? I shook my head. No, thank you. Imogene, Odette put her hand over mine, and I struggled to pull it away. We understand that it's hard for you to leave home. There are so many memories here. But think about the practical side of it. It's getting harder and harder for you to take care of it. The stairs, the garden, it all takes strength, which you have less and less of. My strength is enough, I objected. For now, yes. Avery nodded. But what about a year from now? 2 years from now? Time doesn't stand still, Mom. And what about the house? I looked him straight in the eye. Will you sell it? They exchanged glances again. Actually, Avery began cautiously. We were thinking we might move here, keep the house in the family. That's it. I leaned back in my chair. So, a home after all. Not concern for me, not concern for my well-being. You just want my home. No, Mom, you don't understand. I understand perfectly well, I interrupted. You're up to your eyeballs in debt. You need the money. You think that if I sell the house and move into these golden years, you'll have money to pay off your loans, or you'll move in here and get rid of the rent. Either way, this is about your financial problems, not my well-being. Avery's face darkened. You're being unfair, he said. Of course we'd be financially better off. But we do care about you. This house is too big, too old, and too valuable, I finished. Isn't it? You know what? Avery threw his napkin on the table. We're trying to help you, and you're acting like we're some villains from a cheap soap opera. I just want you to respect my decision, I said. This is my home. I'm not moving anywhere. You'll have to sooner or later, Odette said with a faint chuckle. It's getting dangerous to live alone at your age. What if you fall? What if you get sick and there's no one around? There was that hint again in her words, almost a threat. I looked at her carefully, at her flawless makeup, at the expensive earrings I was sure they couldn't afford. If you need money, I said, looking at Avery, just say the word. Maybe I can help, but the house isn't for sale. We don't need handouts, he blurted out. We want you safe and looked after. I'll be safe in my own house, I replied, and watched over by neighbors I've known for 30 years. The rest of the dinner was spent in tense silence. Odette barely touched dessert, the apple pie I'd baked that morning. Avery drank his wine, avoiding my eyes. When I started to clear the table, Odette got up to help. Her movements were abrupt as she rattled the plates in the sink. I'll do the dishes, she said in a tone that brooked no objection. No need, I started, but she'd already turned on the water. Avery came up to me while Odette was doing the dishes in the kitchen. Mom, he said quietly, I didn't mean to pressure you. It's just, we really need help. Say so, I replied, without all this talk about my safety and well-being. But I do care about you. His eyes seemed sincere, but I didn't know what to believe. It just so happened that the solution that would help you would help us, too. Avery, I sighed, I'm not selling the house. But if you need money, let's discuss it. How much? He named an amount that took my breath away. A lot more than I expected. It's a lot, I said. I know. He lowered his head. That's why I didn't want to ask you directly. I thought if you moved out, sold the house, you'd have enough for a new place and to help us. And if I don't move, then I don't know what we'll do, he said. The bank is already threatening to repossess the car. We're behind on our rent. Odette, she can't save money, always wants more than we can afford. I felt a pang of pity. As manipulative as Avery was, he was still my son, the boy I had once cradled in my arms. I'll think about what I can do, I said. But not tonight. I need time. He nodded, and something flashed in his eyes. Relief? Hope? But quickly faded away. When Odette finished with the dishes, I felt tired. The day had been long and emotionally draining. I think it's time for me to rest, I said. Thank you for dinner. The pie was delicious. Of course, Mom. Avery hugged me. I'm sorry it had to be like this. We just meant well. I know, I said, though I wasn't sure I did. I headed for the stairs leading up to the second floor. Eustace's bedroom and mine were there, as were the boys' rooms. The steps creaked underfoot, another reminder of the age of the house. I had almost reached the top when I heard footsteps behind me. Turning around, I saw Avery coming up next. Did you forget something? I asked. Yes, he answered with a strange tone. Something important. He went up a couple more steps. His eyes were cold, determined. Not the eyes of my son, but the eyes of a stranger. Avery? I took a step back, sensing something wrong. It had all happened so fast. He took another step up and shoved me hard in the chest. I lost my balance and started to fall backwards. Instinctively, I tried to grab the railing, but Odette appeared out of nowhere and grabbed my arm, yanking it to the side. I fell, slowly, like a nightmare. I saw their faces, Avery's determined face, Odette's cold smile, my own children. No, my own child and his wife tried to kill me. I had time to think of Eustace, of how he would have screamed now, how he would have rushed to save me. I had time to say goodbye to a life that, for all the loneliness of the last few years, was still dear to me. And then there was the sound of the front door swinging open with such force that it hit the wall. I was still falling when I heard a familiar voice I hadn't heard in months. Mom? Preston was standing in the doorway, a duffel bag in his hand, a look of shock on his face. He dropped the bag and rushed forward, but it was too late. I was already flying down the stairs, hitting the steps. The last thing I remember before I passed out was Preston screaming and his hands trying to catch me. And then darkness covered everything. Consciousness came back to me slowly, like I was swimming out of a deep, dark lake. First came sounds, the steady beeping of some device, muffled voices, the rustle of footsteps on linoleum. Then came the sensations, a dull, throbbing pain all over my body, especially strong in my right leg and left wrist, dryness in my mouth, the stiffness of the sheets under my back. Finally, I was able to open my eyes. A white ceiling with fluorescent lights, light green walls, an IV next to the bed. A hospital? I tried to move and immediately regretted it. The pain shot through my entire body, wrenching a quiet moan from me. Mom? Preston's voice. He came into view, leaning over me. Slumped face, stubble, reddened eyes. You're awake. Thank God. Preston. My voice was hoarse, barely audible. What? Don't try to talk. He took my hand, the one that wasn't bandaged. I'll get a doctor. He pressed the call button, and a minute later, a nurse, a young woman with her hair in a bun, entered the room. Mrs. Bonner, you're back with us. She smiled, checking the readings. How are you feeling? It hurts, I whispered. That's normal. She nodded. You have a fractured wrist, 2 cracked ribs, and a compound fracture of the right tibia, plus multiple contusions and a concussion. But you're lucky it could have been a lot worse. Lucky? That's a strange word for when your own son tried to kill you. I'll get Dr. Page, the nurse said. He wanted to examine you when you came to. When she came out, I looked at Preston again. You made it, I whispered. Got your message? He squeezed my hand a little tighter. I'm sorry it took so long. I had a flight to Alaska, and there was no cell service in the middle of nowhere. Avery, I started, but he interrupted. I know, Mom. I saw the whole thing. Dr. Page entered the room, a tall, middle-aged man with an attentive gaze. He examined me, checked my pupil response, asked a few questions to assess my condition. My memory is intact, which is a good sign, he concluded. But you have a long recovery ahead of you, Mrs. Bonner, especially with your leg. It was a compound fracture. It required surgery. How much? I coughed. How long have I been here? 2 days, the doctor answered. We kept you in medically induced sleep to reduce the strain on your body after the surgery. 2 days. I missed 2 days of my life. What about Avery? I asked when the doctor finished his exam. Preston waited for the doctor to leave before answering. He and Odette are under house arrest. The police have charged them with attempted murder. The police? I was surprised, though of course it made sense. I called them as soon as the ambulance arrived, Preston explained. Told them what I saw. They had Avery and Odette in custody before they took you to the hospital. He paused for a moment, then added, They're saying it was an accident. They say you tripped and they were trying to catch you. That's a lie. I tried to sit up, but the pain made me stay in the same position. Avery pushed me. Odette pushed my hand away from the railing. I know, Mom. He squeezed my hand again. I saw the whole thing. I got here just in time to witness it. I closed my eyes, remembering that moment. Avery's cold eyes, the sudden jolt, the fall, and Preston's sudden appearance. Why did you come? I asked. After my message? He nodded. You sounded concerned, said it was important. I finished the flight and went straight to Marysville. I wanted to surprise you, but... He shook his head. I guess I came at just the right time. I remembered my message. It was short, no details, just a request to call me back. Not even a hint of danger. And he came anyway. You saved my life, I whispered. I wish I'd come sooner. His voice trembled. Then none of this would have happened. Don't blame yourself. I tried to smile, though my lips were barely compliant. You couldn't have known. A nurse came into the room. Mr. Bonner, the detectives are here. They'd like to speak to your mother if she's able. Preston looked at me questioningly. I can handle it, I nodded. 2 men and a woman in business suits entered the room. The man was older, with graying hair and the tired look of a man who'd seen too much. The woman was young, with a short haircut and attentive eyes. Mrs. Bonner, the man began. I'm Detective Howard, and this is Detective Reed. We're investigating an incident that occurred in your home. If you're feeling well enough, we need to ask you some questions. I nodded, and they began the interview. Detective Reed turned on the tape recorder, gave the date, time, and people present. Then they asked me to tell everything from the beginning, about Avery and Odette's strange behavior, their interest in the house, their attempts to convince me to move, the sudden reconciliation, and dinner. And you're sure your son deliberately pushed you? Detective Howard asked me, when I got to the point of falling. Absolutely, I replied. It wasn't an accident. He came up behind me and pushed me, hard, with both hands. And his wife? Odette was waiting downstairs. When I started to fall and tried to grab the railing, she pushed my hand away. The detectives looked at each other. That matches your oldest son's statement, Detective Reed said. He claims he saw Avery push you, and Odette stopped you from holding on. He did, I confirmed. Your youngest son and his wife claim otherwise, Detective Howard continued. According to them, you were upset after dinner. You were walking up the stairs, and you tripped. They supposedly rushed to your aid, but didn't catch you in time. That's a lie. My voice grew stronger with indignation. They wanted me dead. They wanted the house. Were they in financial trouble? Detective Reed asked. Yes, serious ones. I nodded. Avery confessed it himself the night before the— What happened? They owed money on their apartment, on their car. They took out a loan on a business they couldn't launch. And you refused to sell the house or move, despite their insistence? Yes, it's my house. I wasn't going anywhere. I understand, Detective Howard nodded. Is there anyone else who can corroborate what you say about the pressure from your son and daughter-in-law? Who did you tell about it? Dash. My friend Ruth Simmons, I replied, and Helen Bradley's attorney. I consulted her about the will, told her about the situation. It's very important, Detective Reed wrote down the names. We'll be in touch. What's gonna happen to Avery and Odette? Preston asked when the detectives finished their interview. The DA has already charged them with attempted murder, Detective Howard replied. They are now under house arrest with electronic bracelets, bailed out by Mrs. Odette's parents. But with Mrs. Bonner's testimony and yours, Mr. Bonner, the case looks serious. They're looking at lengthy prison sentences. When the detectives left, I leaned back on the pillows, feeling extremely tired. This whole thing seemed like some kind of nightmare. My own son had tried to kill me for a house and money. Are you all right? Preston asked, noticing my condition. No, I answered honestly. I don't think I ever will be. He nodded understandingly. Get some rest. I'll be right here. I slept for a few hours and woke up to a soft conversation. Preston was sitting by the window talking on the phone, trying not to wake me. Yes, she's in stable condition, he was saying. No, I don't know how long the rehab will last. Yes, of course I'll stay with her. No, I'll manage. He noticed I was awake and ended the conversation. I gotta go. I'll call you later. Who was that? I asked when he came to the bed. My dispatcher, Preston answered. I told him I was taking an indefinite leave of absence. I'll be with you until you get better. You don't have to. I started, but he interrupted. I do, Mom. I won't leave you alone. I looked at my oldest son, his tired face, the wrinkles around his eyes that I didn't remember. When did he get so old? When did we become such strangers to each other? Why did you leave? I asked suddenly. After my father's funeral, why did you call so rarely? Preston sighed and sat on the edge of the bed. It's hard to explain, he began. After Dad died, everything changed. The house didn't feel like home without him. And I felt guilt. Guilt? Guilt for what? For disappointing him. Preston looked away. He wanted me to be an engineer, and I dropped out of college. He wanted me to live near him, and I moved away. We never really made up, and then it was too late. He was proud of you, I said quietly. He just didn't know how to show it. Did he? There was hope in his eyes. Yes, he kept a newspaper clipping of you saving your family from a burning car on the highway, carried it in his wallet. Preston looked at me in surprise. I didn't know. He was stubborn. I smiled weakly. So were you. Like me, for that matter. We were silent for a moment, each of us thinking about something else. Then I asked, Have you seen Avery? After No. Preston shook his head. The detectives didn't recommend contact with him or Odette before the trial. They could use any conversation against us. Against us, I repeated. That's weird to hear. It's like we're on opposite sides of the fence. We're family. We're family, Preston corrected me. What they did? It's unforgivable, Mom. I knew he was right. But part of me still couldn't accept that my youngest son, my Avery, with his sunny smile and charm, could have planned my murder in cold blood. They could have just asked for help, I said. I would have found a way to help. Asking for help isn't easy for everyone, Preston pointed out. Some people find it easier to take what they want than to admit they need it. At that moment, the door of the room opened and a nurse entered with a tray. Dinner time, Mrs. Bonner, she announced. And medicine. Dinner was hospital food, tasteless broth, mashed potatoes, and compote. But I found I was hungry, so I ate most of it. Preston watched me with a slight smile. What? I asked. Just glad to see you have an appetite, he replied. That's a good sign. After dinner, I took my medication and felt drowsy, but before I fell asleep, I asked another question. What will happen to the house? While I'm here, I'll keep an eye on it, Preston assured me. The police had already removed all the seals. I went over there yesterday and checked it out, and everything's fine. Picked up some things for you. Thanks, I mumbled, falling asleep. The next days blended into a monotonous routine of hospital life. Inspections, procedures, tests. I was getting better, but the pain wasn't going away. Dr. Page said it would be a long recovery, especially considering my age. Preston was there for me every day. He brought me books, fruit, fresh flowers. He talked about the house, about fixing the leaky faucet in the kitchen and trimming the hedges. Sometimes we talked about the past, about his childhood, about Eustace, about how things had changed. Sometimes we just stayed silent, and that silence was comfortable. On my 5th day in the hospital, Ruth came in. She looked worried and indignant. Imogene, dear. She hugged me gently, trying not to hurt my damaged ribs. How awful. I couldn't believe it when I found out. I still can't believe it either, I admitted. The police came to see me, Ruth said, sitting down in the chair beside the bed. I told them everything I knew about Avery and Odette's behavior, about how worried you were. Thank you. I took her hand. It'll help the investigation. How are you feeling? She asked with genuine concern. Physically? Everything hurts. I tried to smile. Mentally? I don't know, Ruth. How do you get over being betrayed by your own child? In time, she squeezed my hand, day by day, and with the support of those who love you. She nodded toward Preston, who stepped out into the hallway to let us talk alone. He won't leave your side, Ruth remarked. That's a good thing. You'll finally be able to repair your relationship. Yes, I agreed. It's a shame it's taken such a situation. Life rarely gives us easy paths, Ruth said philosophically. But the important thing is that you're together again. She pulled a newspaper out of her bag and handed it to me. I don't know if you need to see this, but your story's been in the press. I unfolded the paper. On the front page was an article with the headline, Shocking Attempt, Son and Daughter-in-Law Tried to Kill Mother for Inheritance. Next to it was a picture of me from last year's town festival, and pictures of Avery and Odette from their social media page. Dash God, I whispered, looking through the article. They call them a greedy couple and cold-blooded manipulators. Isn't that true? Ruth asked. It is, but this is Avery, my son, the one who tried to kill you, she reminded me. I put the paper down, unable to read any further. What's the word in town? I asked. Everyone's shocked, Ruth replied. No one would have thought Avery would do such a thing. He always seemed so nice, so courteous. But you know what's strange? Nobody's surprised about Odette. A lot of people always thought she was mercenary and cold. That's when Preston came back. Detectives called, he said. They want to meet tomorrow. They have some news on the case. What kind of news? I asked. They didn't say, just that it was important. After Ruth left, I picked up the paper again. The article was dramatized. Elderly mother, cunning plan, unexpected rescue. Reading about myself in that context was strange, almost surreal, like it was about someone else. You shouldn't read this. Preston took the paper from me. You'll just get upset. I'm already upset, I said. It's not gonna get any worse. He sat down next to me on the edge of the bed. You know, I've been thinking. When you get out of here, you're gonna need care. Rehab. You won't be able to live alone for a while. E? I already knew where he was going with this. I could stay with you. Take an extended vacation or even quit. Get a job in Marysville. Preston, I shook my head. I can't ask you to give up your life for me. You're not asking. He smiled. I'm offering it myself. And then, what kind of life do I have? Endless roads, motels, loneliness. Maybe it's time to settle down. I looked at him carefully. There was a determination in his eyes that I knew well. The same determination I knew Eustace had when he was making a final decision. Are you sure? I asked. Absolutely, he nodded. I won't leave you alone. Not now. The next day, Detectives Howard and Reed arrived. They looked more serious than usual. We have some new information, Detective Howard began. We checked your son and his wife's financial records. They weren't just in debt. They were on the verge of bankruptcy. Loans, mortgages that they hid from you. Mortgage? I was surprised. But they were renting. They bought a house 6 months ago, Detective Reed explained. An expensive house in the suburbs. They took out a mortgage with a minimal down payment. But the payments were too high for their income, and they started missing payments. And that's not all, Detective Howard continued. We found an insurance policy on your life taken out by Avery 4 months ago, a large sum of money. I felt a chill go through me. An insurance policy? I asked again. But I hadn't signed any insurance papers. Exactly, Detective Reed nodded. The signature was forged. We've already contacted the insurance company, and they've launched an internal investigation. It's a serious crime, in addition to attempted murder. So, Preston said slowly, not only were they planning on getting the house, but also the insurance money? It would appear so, Detective Howard confirmed. The plan was complex. The death was going to look like an accident, which would allow them to get both the inheritance and the insurance money. I closed my eyes, trying to process what I was hearing. My son hadn't just succumbed to an instant impulse, he'd been coldly and calculatingly planning my murder. For months. That changes the case, the detective continued. The DA is adding charges of fraud and forgery. The likelihood of jail time has increased dramatically. When the detectives left, I lay silent for a long time, staring at the ceiling. Preston sat next to me, not trying to break the silence. He understood that I needed time to digest this information. I never thought, I finally said, that my own child could want me dead. It's not your fault, Mom, Preston said quietly. You didn't do anything to deserve this. Did I? I turned to him. Maybe I'd missed something in his upbringing. Maybe I hadn't given him something important. No, Preston was adamant. We grew up in the same house with the same parents. You gave us both the same love and care. If Avery grew up this way, that's his choice, not yours. There was logic in what he said, but my heart refused to accept it. As a mother, I felt responsible for the kind of person my child had become. You know, Preston said after a pause, I think it's not so much about Avery as it is about Odette. She always wanted more than they could afford, expensive things, a prestigious address. Maybe she pushed him into that decision. Maybe, I agreed. But it was still his decision, and he made his choice. That evening, after Preston had gone home to rest and change, I asked the nurse to help me with the phone. I wanted to call Helen Bradley, the lawyer who had helped me with the will. Mrs. Bonner. Her voice was warm, concerned. I read about what happened in the paper. How are you feeling? I've been better, I answered honestly. Helen, I need your advice. I want to change my will. Of course, she said. I can come to the hospital tomorrow if it's convenient for you. That would be wonderful. May I ask exactly what changes you want to make? She asked. I want to disinherit Avery, I answered firmly, completely. He won't get the house. He won't get the money. Nothing. I understand. I heard her voice without judgment. It's your right. I'll prepare the necessary documents. When I ended the conversation and handed the phone back to the nurse, I felt a strange sense of relief. It was as if by making this decision, I had finally taken control of the situation. Helen Bradley came the next day, as promised. She brought the paperwork to change the will, and I signed it right there in the hospital room, in the presence of a nurse who had agreed to be a witness. Preston tactfully stepped out into the hallway, saying it was my own business and he didn't want to influence my decisions. It's official now, Helen said, tucking the papers into her briefcase. Your youngest son is completely excluded from the will. All assets will go to Preston upon your death. Thank you. I felt a strange mixture of relief and sadness. I never thought I'd have to do this. No one thinks about it, Helen said softly. But you made the right decision. What Avery did can't be forgiven or forgotten. She paused for a moment, then asked in a more formal tone, Did the police contact you about the insurance policy? Yes, I nodded. The detectives told me yesterday. I had no idea it existed. I didn't think so. Helen frowned. It's a serious crime, forging signatures on financial documents. The insurance company has already started an internal investigation. How could he even do it? I asked. Don't you need me to be present in person to take out a policy like this? Normally, yes, Helen agreed. But some companies are less strict, especially if the agent is an acquaintance or a friend. Did you mention that Avery works for an insurance company? Yes, he does auto insurance. Maybe he had connections in the life insurance department, she suggested. In any case, the police would look into it. After Helen left, Preston returned. He brought fruit and fresh magazines. Is everything all right? He asked, noticing my mood. As much as possible, I replied. I changed the will. Avery won't get anything anymore. Preston nodded, not seeming surprised. I figured you'd do that, and rightly so. What do you think about everything going to you now? I asked bluntly. Honestly? He sat down next to me. I don't care. I never expected to inherit anything. I have my own place, a small house in Oregon. I have enough money, and I'd rather you live as long as possible and use it all yourself. I smiled, genuinely for the first time in days. Preston had always been like that, direct, honest, no backward thoughts. An hour later, Detectives Howard and Reed came in. This time, they brought a file folder. Mrs. Bonner, Detective Howard began. We have some new information we'd like to share with you. I nodded, bracing myself for more bad news. We got a search warrant for your son and his wife's house, he continued, and we found disturbing documents. Detective Reed opened a folder and pulled out some papers. These documents were prepared for filing with the court, she explained. This is a petition to declare you incompetent and appoint Avery as your guardian. What? I was shocked. But I have full legal capacity. Exactly, Detective Reed nodded. But these documents say otherwise. There's a forged medical report from a doctor, Mitchell, who supposedly diagnosed you with early stages of dementia. I've never been to Dr. Mitchell, I said indignantly. My doctor is Dr. Burke, has been for over 15 years. We checked, Detective Howard said. Dr. Mitchell exists, but he's never treated you. What's more, he claims he never signed this report. His signature was forged, too. My God, I whispered, realizing the magnitude of the betrayal. Were they planning to declare me insane? It would seem so, the detective confirmed. If the court declared you incompetent, Avery, as your guardian, would have control of all your assets, including the house. He could sell it or mortgage it without asking your permission. I looked at Preston, who was standing next to the bed, his fists clenched so tight his knuckles turned white. That explains their strange behavior over the last few months, he said. All those hints about Mom becoming distracted, forgetful, they were creating a backstory. Quite right. Detective Reed nodded. We interviewed Mrs. Bonner's neighbors and acquaintances. Avery and Odette hinted to many that Imogene's memory was not good, that she sometimes doesn't recognize people and forgets important things. Not at all. I resented that. My memory is perfect. We know, Detective Howard reassured me. No one who's been interviewed has confirmed these claims. On the contrary, they all say you're of sound mind and good judgment. What else did you find? Preston asked. Detective Reed pulled some more documents out of a folder. Plans for remodeling the house. Pretty detailed. Apparently, they were going to completely remodel it once they got control. I took the sheets of blueprints. It was my house, but altered beyond recognition. Walls knocked down, the layout completely different. My bedroom turned into a home theater, Preston's room into Odette's dressing room. They've been planning this for a long time, I said, looking at the blueprints. These plans are too detailed for a spontaneous idea. At least a few months, Detective Howard agreed. We found correspondence with the architect dated March of this year. March, almost 6 months ago, when Avery and Odette had just started their regular visits, supposedly out of concern for me. There's good news, the detective continued. All these findings strengthen the case against them considerably. The prosecutor is confident he can get a conviction. After the detectives left, I sat in silence for a long time, trying to make sense of what I'd heard. Preston didn't interrupt me, only occasionally asking if I needed anything. They were planning to declare me crazy, I finally said, lock me up in some institution and take my house. And when that didn't work, they decided to just kill me. Don't think about that now, Preston said softly. The important thing is that their plan failed. You're alive, and they'll answer for everything. But how could Avery? There was pain in my voice. I raised him. I loved him. I gave him everything I had. How could he do this to me? Preston sat down next to me and took my hand. I don't know, Mom. Maybe it's Odette's influence. Maybe he's always been like this, just hiding it well. But one thing I do know is that it wasn't your fault. You were a good mother, to both of us. The next day, Ruth came to visit me. She brought homemade cookies and news from town. Everyone's talking about it, she said, sitting down in her chair. The newspapers were full of headlines about the Bonner case. Odette and Avery have become local celebrities, but with a downside. I hate being the center of attention, I sighed. I know, dear. Ruth shook her head sympathetically. But it'll pass. The next sensation will come along, and you'll be forgotten. I hope so, I said without much conviction. By the way, have you heard of Ted Booker? Ruth asked. Avery's friend from college, the one who works in real estate? Yes. Ruth leaned closer, as if she were about to share a secret. He gave a statement to the police. Apparently, Avery offered him a percentage of the sale of your house if he'd help him get the deal done quickly and without questions. And Ted accepted? I asked, knowing the answer. No, Ruth shook her head. He refused. He said it looked suspicious. That's why Avery had gone to another agent who wouldn't ask questions. At least someone has a conscience, I said. Not everyone does. Ruth pursed her lips. You know who else is involved? Odette's sister, Veronica. She's a nurse at the Golden Years nursing home. She's the one who was supposed to look after you if they put you there. Watching over me? I interjected. To make sure you didn't contact lawyers or try to challenge the court, Ruth explained. She'd monitor your calls, your visitors. Basically, she'd keep you isolated. I felt a chill run down my spine. The plan was well thought out. They'd planned for everything. How do you know that? Preston asked, who had been listening in silence until then. It's a small town, Ruth shrugged. People talk. Besides, my niece works at the police station as a secretary. She doesn't have access to the case files, of course, but she can hear the conversations. After Ruth left, Preston suggested I take a walk down the corridor. The doctors recommended a gradual increase in physical activity, and short walks with a walker were part of my rehabilitation. You're quiet, Preston said as we walked slowly down the hall. What are you thinking about? About how lucky I am, I answered. If you hadn't arrived that night, their plan might have worked. I'd be dead, and they'd have gotten everything they wanted. Don't think about it. Preston gently propped me up on his elbow. Things worked out differently. Thanks to you, I stopped and looked at him. Thank you for saving my life. Any son would have done the same. Not any son, I said bitterly. As it turned out. That evening, Detective Howard called with an update. Preston put me on speaker so I could hear too. The DA's office offered Odette a deal, the detective reported. If she testified against Avery, her charges could be reduced. And she took it? Preston asked. Almost instantly, the detective said with satisfaction in his voice. She's already started to testify, and I have to say, it's revealing new details about the case. What details? I asked, feeling my heart start to beat faster. According to Odette, it was Avery's idea to get rid of you in the first place, the detective answered. He started talking about it a year ago, when they got into financial difficulties. At first, it was just a matter of convincing you to sell the house and move into a nursing home. But when it became clear you wouldn't agree, the plan changed. She claims that it was Avery who suggested that you be declared incompetent, he continued. And that the stairs were his idea, too. They'd been planning it for weeks, picking the right moment. And you believe her? Preston asked skeptically. Not entirely, admitted the detective. She's obviously trying to minimize her role. But many of the details are corroborated by the evidence we've found, and her testimony will help us build a stronger case against Avery. What's he saying? I asked. Avery? He keeps insisting it was an accident, the detective replied. But his theory is getting less and less convincing with each new piece of evidence, especially now that Odette's testifying against him. After talking to the detective, I felt strangely devastated. All these new details only confirmed what I already knew. My son had betrayed me in the worst way possible. The next day, doctor, Paige told me I would be discharged soon. You're recovering faster than we expected, he said approvingly. Of course, there is still a long rehabilitation ahead, especially for the leg, but the basic treatment can be continued on an outpatient basis. When can I go home? I asked. I think in 3 or 4 days, the doctor replied. We want to make sure you can walk with the walker with enough confidence, and, of course, you'll need help at home. I'll be with her, Preston said. I've already set up the first floor so Mom won't have to climb the stairs. Good. The doctor nodded. In that case, we'll get you ready for discharge. When he left, I looked at Preston in surprise. You set up the house? Yes. He looked a little embarrassed. I rearranged the furniture in the living room, made room for the walker, moved your things from the bedroom to your father's office on the first floor, installed a handrail in the bathroom. You did all that yourself? I was touched. Not exactly, he admitted. Ruth helped with your things. I had to hire a handyman to install the handrails. Thank you. I squeezed his hand. I don't know what I would have done without you. You'd be fine, he said confidently. You're stronger than you think, Mom. That evening, Helen Bradley came in with the new documents. It's a power of attorney in the event of incapacity, she explained. You asked me to put it in Preston's name. Yes, I confirmed, accepting the papers. After everything that's happened, I want to make sure that if something happens to me, someone I trust will make the decisions. That's reasonable. Helen nodded. Especially now. I signed the papers and Helen certified them. Now, officially, Preston has the authority to make medical and financial decisions for you if you are unable to do so yourself, she said. But only in that case. As long as you are of sound mind, all decisions remain yours. That's exactly what I wanted. I nodded. After Helen left, Preston was silent for a long time, obviously thinking about something. Was something wrong? I asked. No, it's just, he hesitated. It's a big responsibility. Something you've entrusted to me. I know, I said, but I'm sure you'll make the right decisions. Unlike Avery, you've never given me reason to doubt you. I'll do my best to honor your trust, he said seriously. The next day, the detectives came again, this time with official papers. We need your testimony for the trial, explained Detective Howard. The stenographer will write down everything you say under oath. I nodded, ready for that. I'll tell you everything I remember. And I did about everything. About Avery and Odette's strange behavior in recent months, their insistence on selling the house, about dinner that night, and how Avery had pushed me down the stairs and Odette had stopped me from holding on to the banister. My story took over an hour, with detailed answers to the detective's questions. Thank you, Mrs. Bonner, Detective Reed said when the stenographer was finished. Your testimony is extremely important to the case. The trial is likely to be in a few months, and you'll have to repeat all of this in front of the jury. I'm ready, I said firmly. I'll do whatever it takes to make sure they get what they deserve. After the detectives left, Preston showed me the folder he'd brought from home. I found something in my father's office, he said. Documents that might be useful to the case. The folder contained old bank statements, tax returns, and deeds to the house. What's this for? I asked, not understanding. I found some documents with your signature on them, Preston explained. A real signature. If I compared it to the one on the insurance policy, it would be obvious that it was forged. You're right. I looked at the documents with renewed interest. This could be another piece of evidence. We looked through the papers together, selecting the ones where my signature was the clearest and most visible. There were a dozen of them. I'll take them to the detectives tomorrow, Preston said, putting the selected documents back in the folder. They should help the case. Thank you. I looked at him gratefully. For everything you're doing. It's the least I can do, he replied simply. After so many years away, we talked for a long time that night about the past, about the years apart, about misunderstandings and resentments, about Eustace, who was a good father but didn't know how to show his feelings, about how Preston always felt like he wasn't living up to expectations, about my own guilt for not taking his side often enough. I've always loved you, I said, even when I didn't understand your decisions. I know, he replied, and I love you too, Mom, always. We talked late into the night, and with each word, with each explanation, the years of estrangement melted away, giving way to a new understanding and closeness. The next day, Preston took the files to the detectives and then came back with news. They say the case is getting stronger, he reported. especially after Odette's testimony. She went into every detail of their plan, trying to save herself. So, what now? I asked. We wait for the trial, Preston replied. Detective Howard thinks that Avery will start talking soon, too. When he realizes that Odette betrayed him, maybe he'll make a deal with the DA, too. You think he'll confess? I don't know. Preston shrugged. But even if he doesn't, there's enough evidence for a conviction. I nodded, feeling oddly calm. Everything was coming to its logical conclusion. Avery and Odette would answer for what they'd done, and Preston and I would start a new chapter of our lives, together, in the house that meant so much to both of us. I was released from the hospital 6 days after my fall. Preston came to pick me up in a rented minivan that had enough room for my wheelchair and my belongings. Dr. Page gave detailed rehabilitation instructions, a list of exercises, and a medication schedule. Ready to go home? Preston asked as we pulled out of the hospital parking lot. More than ready, I replied. I'd never liked hospitals. The city outside the window seemed the same, but I was looking at it with new eyes. Everything had changed. I had changed. My youngest son had tried to kill me, and my oldest, who I'd barely spoken to in years, had saved my life and was now taking care of me. As we pulled up to the house, I noticed that Preston had set up a wheelchair ramp next to the porch. Where did that come from? I asked as he helped me out of the car. Borrowed it from a neighbor, he replied. Remember Mr. Jenkins? His wife had a stroke 2 years ago, and they had to install a ramp. He graciously let us use it for as long as we needed it. Preston rolled the chair into the house, and I was surprised to see how the furnishings had changed. The furniture in the living room had been rearranged to make aisles for the chair. In the corner was a hospital bed, not exactly like the one in the hospital, but with adjustable height and handrails. Ruth helped with the bed, Preston explained, noticing my gaze. Her cousin, works for a medical equipment company. We rented it for a few months. You've thought of everything, I said gratefully. While Preston made tea, I looked around. The house looked clean, well maintained, fresh flowers on the mantelpiece. The windows gleamed. Even the curtains seemed to have been recently washed. Did you do the cleaning too? I asked him when he came back. Ruth helped, he admitted, and Mrs. Jenkins too. They came yesterday while I was getting the last of my things out of the hospital. Thank you, I sipped my tea, for all this, for coming back. I should have come back sooner. There was bitterness in his voice. If I hadn't distanced myself, maybe none of this would have happened. Don't blame yourself. I shook my head. You couldn't have known what Avery was up to. The next day, the prosecutor, Elise Montgomery, a young dark-skinned woman with a piercing gaze, and her assistant, a skinny young man who was more silent and taking notes, arrived. Mrs. Bonner, Montgomery began after exchanging pleasantries. I'd like to discuss prosecutorial strategy with you. The case of your son and his wife is unusual. Most crimes against the elderly are committed by outsiders, not family members. But it happened, I said, and I want them to answer to the law. That's why I'm here. The prosecutor nodded. We've gathered enough evidence to bring serious charges. Attempted murder, fraud, forgery. The list is long. What are they facing? Preston asked, sitting next to me. At the maximum, up to 25 years in prison, Montgomery replied. But in practice, if they agreed to plea bargain, the terms could be less. Odette has already agreed to cooperate, right? I asked. Yes, the prosecutor confirmed. Her testimony will be valuable to the case against Avery, but that doesn't mean she'll get away with it. It's just that her sentence might be shorter. And Avery? My voice shook when I said my son's name. So far, he's refusing to plead guilty. Montgomery shook her head, insists it was an accident, But with Odette's testimony, your testimony, and your oldest son's, plus all the evidence we've gathered, he doesn't have much of a chance of exoneration. What do you want from me? I asked you bluntly. Your testimony at trial, the prosecutor replied. You'll have to tell the jury everything that happened. I nodded. I'm ready. I'll tell everything I know. I must warn you, the assistant prosecutor interjected, that the defense may try to paint you as an unreliable witness. They may insinuate memory problems, emotional instability due to age. I'm of sound mind and good judgment, I said, and I'm willing to take any test to prove it. After the prosecutor left, I sat in silence for a long time, thinking about the upcoming trial. The thought of having to speak out publicly against my own son was hard, but the alternative, letting him get away with what he had done, was unacceptable. What's on your mind? Preston asked, bringing me a cup of tea. About how things had gotten to this point, I replied. Where did I go wrong in raising Avery? What did I miss? Mom? Preston sat down next to me. It's not your fault. Some people are just like that, selfish, greedy. It's not your fault. But he's my son. There was pain in my voice. I gave birth to him, raised him, loved him, and he betrayed your love, Preston said harshly. It was his choice, not yours. You can't blame yourself for what he did. The next weeks passed in a routine of rehabilitation. The physical therapist came 3 times a week, helping me regain strength in my injured leg. I went from a wheelchair to a walker, then to a cane. Every step was difficult, but I was determined to regain my independence. Preston was always there, cooking meals, helping with medications, driving me to doctor's appointments. We talked a lot, catching up on the years we had missed. I learned about his life on the road, the places he'd seen, the people he'd met. He told me about his little house in Oregon, about his neighbors, about how he loves to fish in the local river. Why didn't you get married? I asked him one evening as we sat on the porch watching the sunset. I didn't meet the right person. He shrugged. Or maybe I just wasn't ready to settle down. The road is a drag, you know. Avery and Odette had a preliminary hearing in mid-October. I insisted on attending, even though Preston was against it. You don't have to go through that, he said. The prosecutor said your presence isn't necessary at this point. I want to look him in the eye, I replied firmly. I want him to see me, alive despite his attempts. The courtroom was quiet and cool. We sat in the back row, waiting for the hearing to begin. When Avery and Odette were brought in, I felt my heart clench. They were in regular clothes, not prison uniforms. The court had allowed them to remain under house arrest until the trial, but they both looked drained, aged. Odette kept her distance from Avery, avoiding even looking in his direction. Avery spotted me almost immediately. Our eyes met across the hall, and I saw a mixture of emotions in his gaze. Surprise, fear, and something else. Regret? Remorse? I couldn't say for sure. When the meeting was over and they were being led out of the room, Avery looked at me again. This time, there was pleading in his eyes. Did he want me to believe him? Or was he just afraid of what awaited him? Are you okay? Preston asked as we walked out of the courthouse. I don't know, I answered honestly. It's weird to see your kid in that situation, even knowing what he did. I understand, he nodded. No matter what happens, he's still your son. Biologically, yes, I said after a pause. But as a son, he died to me the moment he pushed me down the stairs. The next day, Helen Bradley called. How are you feeling after yesterday? She asked with genuine concern. It was difficult, I admitted, but I'm glad I went. I'm calling about something else, Helen said. Avery's attorney contacted me. They want to discuss the possibility of an out-of-court settlement. What does that mean? I asked, even though I already knew. They're offering a deal, Helen explained. Avery will plead guilty in exchange for a reduced sentence, and he's willing to give up any claim to your assets, including your inheritance, as if he had anything else to claim. I grinned bitterly. I've already changed my will. I know, Helen said, but a formal renunciation on his part will close any potential legal loopholes. He won't be able to contest the will in the future, even if he gets out of prison. I promised to think about it and consult Preston. We discussed the proposal at length that evening. How do you feel about it? He asked. Do you want to avoid a trial? I don't know. I looked out the window at the darkening garden. Part of me wants this to be over as soon as possible. The other part wants him to take full responsibility for what he's done. That night I dreamt of Eustace. He sat in his favorite chair, as he had done thousands of times in his lifetime, and looked at me with that mixture of love and severity that was so characteristic of him. What would you do? I asked him in my dream. What you think is right, Imogene, he answered. You always knew what was right. I woke up with a clear understanding of what I had to do. At breakfast, I said to Preston, I don't accept the deal. I want there to be a trial. I want everyone to know what they were planning to do. He nodded, showing no surprise. I thought you were going to say that. Why? Because you've always been principled, he replied with a slight smile, even when it was hard. In December, a month before the trial, Detective Howard called with unexpected news. Avery wants to meet with you, Mrs. Bonner. Alone. Why? I asked, surprised. He didn't say, just that it was important and personal. Preston was adamantly against it. It's a bad idea, Mom. He could manipulate you, try to get you to recant your testimony. After much discussion, we decided that I would meet with Avery, but not alone. Preston would be present, as would the detective. The meeting took place in the visiting room at the police station. Avery looked gaunt, aged. As I was led into the room, he looked up, and for a moment I saw in his eyes the little boy I'd once cradled in my arms. Mommy, he said softly, thank you for coming. I sat down across from him, and Preston stood behind me, putting a hand on my shoulder in a supportive gesture. What did you want, Avery? I asked bluntly. To talk, he answered. To explain. Explain why you tried to kill me? My voice was colder than I intended. I didn't mean to kill you. He shook his head. I was confused. Odette and I had gotten into debt. The bank was threatening to repossess the car. We could have lost the apartment. And you thought my house was the solution to your problems. I finished for him. Yes, he lowered his head. At first, we just wanted to convince you to sell it. Then, the plan changed. Whose plan was it? Preston asked sharply. Yours or Odette's? Both, Avery answered after a pause. But the latter idea, it was my idea. Odette just agreed to help. I felt something inside me finally break. The last hope that my son was just a puppet in the hands of a manipulative wife was gone. Why did you call me? I asked again. What do you want? Forgiveness, he answered, raising his eyes to me. I know I don't deserve it. I know what I did is unforgivable. But I want you to know that I am sorry. Every day, every minute, I regret what I did. I stared at him for a long moment, trying to find sincerity in his eyes. Maybe it was there. Maybe he really was sorry. But it didn't change anything. I can't forgive you, Avery, I said finally. Not now, maybe never. What you did, it's a betrayal that can't be forgotten or forgiven. I understand, he nodded, tears glistening in his eyes. I just wanted you to know. As we were leaving, he called out to me, Mom, I'll plead guilty to all charges. You won't have to go through the trial. I turned around. Why? Because it's the truth. he answered simply, and because it's the least I can do for you right now. Avery kept his word. The following week, he formally pleaded guilty to all charges. The court sentenced him to 15 years in prison with the possibility of parole in 10. Odette, thanks to a plea deal, got 8 years with the possibility of parole in 5. After the verdict, I experienced a strange feeling, not relief, as I had expected, but rather emptiness. It was as if an important chapter of my life had closed, and now I had to start a new one, not knowing what it would contain. Preston noticed my mood. "You don't have to be strong all the time, Mom. You can let yourself grieve." "Grieve for what?" I asked. "The son you lost? Or the one I'd never really known?" "Both," he said softly, "and the life that could have been if things had turned out differently." That night I cried for the first time since the fall. I cried for lost opportunities, for dashed hopes, for a family that would never be the same. Preston sat next to me, holding my hand, not trying to comfort me with empty words, just being there for me, and that was enough. Spring brought new changes. I had fully recovered physically, though my legs still hurt sometimes in the wet weather. Preston found a steady job in Marysville, not as a trucker, but as a mechanic at a large auto repair shop. He rented a small apartment not far from my house, though he often stayed overnight at my place. "You don't have to stay in Marysville forever," I told him once. "You have your own life, your own home in Oregon." "I know," he replied, "but I like it here, and I want to be there for you, to make up for lost time." Our relationship changed, became deeper, more sincere. We talked a lot about the past, about Eustace, about the future. Sometimes Avery's name came up in our conversations, but less and less often. Not because we were trying to forget him, but because we were learning to move on despite his betrayal. In May, I decided to go back to work, not full-time like I had been, but just a few hours a week at the library. It gave me a chance to socialize with people, to feel useful. "Are you sure you're ready?" Preston asked when I told him about my decision. "Absolutely," I nodded. "I can't just sit at home and wait for what? The end? I want to live, Preston. Really live while I can." He smiled. "You've always been strong, Mom. Stronger than you thought you were." And he was right. I have been strong. Despite betrayal, pain, and loss, I stood strong. I kept my home, my independence, my pride, and I gained a new bond with the son I'd almost lost to misunderstandings and resentment. The house no longer seemed so empty and quiet. There was life in it again, talking, laughing, and while nothing could completely erase the pain of Avery's betrayal, I'd learned to live with it, to not let it define my future. Every morning I woke up and looked at the picture of Eustace on my bedside table. "We made it," I told him. "We stood up to it," and I thought he was smiling back.